Okay, friends, good morning. This is session 1, Sybase Adaptive Server Enterprise. Now it is SAP ASE. I'll call SAP ASE only Adaptive Server, uh, just to save time. So, what is this Sybase Adaptive Server Enterprise or SAP ASE? Uh, it was way back. It started in 1984, somewhere 1980s, by Sybase company. Sybase joined hand with Microsoft and they work together. Actually the term SQL Server was given by Sybase. So earlier it was to start with, it was Sybase SQL Server. Then they joined hand with the Microsoft to come out with the product SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server. So SQL Server was a part of Sybase company, and the Microsoft added their name, so it became Sybase SQL Server. Sorry, Microsoft SQL Server. Okay, this is the product. So therefore it is a very old technology, and even before Microsoft. What is the agenda for this session is introduction to Sybase database, define components of Sybase SQL, understand the very basic architecture and the system databases, and the responsibilities of a database administrator. Now, as I said, Sybase was founded in 1984 by Mark Hoffman, Bob Epstein, Jane Doughty, and Tom Haggin in Epstein's home in Berkeley, California. Currently, Sybase is an SAP company, SAP company. At first, it was known as Sybase SQL Server before they joined hand with Microsoft. Microsoft and Sybase shared the source code after their parted ways. It happens in 1991, if I'm not wrong, 1991-92. I have seen this development because I worked on the computer for the first time in 1986. And 1990-91 I completed my education, and 1992 onward I went to job. I've been working. So that's a background, the small little background about me. So I have seen the Sybase the SQL Server first. I worked on SQL Server version 4, then 4.5, then 6, 6.55. I worked on all these versions of SQL Server. So indirectly I worked on Sybase SQL Server way back in 1994-95 also. So Microsoft and Sybase shared the source code, and Sybase SQL Server 4.9, which I said I worked on, and Microsoft SQL Server 6 and 6.5 were virtually identical, because the technology has not changed. They have not changed the architecture of the server itself. Till today, the devices, when you install Microsoft SQL Server and you install Sybase Server, you will find resemblance, and you will find that directory structure is also same, the databases are also same, the default stored procedures are also same, the T-SQL, that a transact SQL is precisely the same. So you will hardly find differences. But yes, in terms of presentation, in terms of GUI, in terms of interface, a lot of things have changed, and in fact they have taken two different directions now, as far as the connectivity and as far as the first layer, application layer, or the interaction layer is concerned. The Visual Studio, or that SQL Server Management Studio, is altogether different. There is no connectivity, there is no link between the Sybase GUI based tool to connect and Microsoft's tool, which is Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So they are totally different. But then when you talk about the database, when you talk about the partition, when you talk about stored procedure, when you talk about the bulk copy program utility, BCP utility, the syntax, I found similarities, and more or less I found that they are the same thing. So if you have done SQL Server, you will not find any big difficulty in understanding this concept. Till date, the similarities can be seen in a T-SQL and basic process architecture, as I said. Okay, and this is the basic architecture. The operating system is very transparent to the Sybase server, and we have some shared program in the program memory, shared executables. Like we may have multiple Sybase engines, as you can see in the first part, engine 0, engine 1, engine n. We can have multiple engines configured, and we can have multiple. So to understand this, to correlate it with the Microsoft SQL Server, there we have multiple instances of SQL Server. Here we have multiple engines of adaptive server. We have that concept. Then we have databases which are stored in directory structure or raw devices. We can have that also, the first part of that image. And then we have operating system, ASE operating system thread pools, which connect to the SQL through the operating system, which access the resources. So citylib, CPC, and then we have disk utility, NetIO. These are the utilities which are there, which work with the operating system in a very transparent manner. Then for any architecture of any RDBMS, we have a concept of shared memory, where procedures and statement cache are created, user log caches are created, run queries or tasks are listed in terms of execution queue. Then we have sleep queue of tasks. Then we have lock change, which are maintained for this concurrency control and the locking. Then we have pending IO processes. So this is your shared memory. And then we have data index caches which are applicable, which are available in the structure. So this is a basic architecture of Sybase Adaptive Server Enterprise SAP ASE now. Basically, to understand this SAP Server Enterprise architecture, it is a client server model. And being experienced people, you know it very well that a client is one who is trying to connect, and the server is one who is handling, managing the databases and everything, that is providing services to the client. Now the client may be the same machine on your server is running. Client may be located at different location, geographical location from where it is trying to connect. It may be an application, user application which is running on a remote location and trying to connect to the server. It may be a user program. It may be direct user connecting and trying to execute some query on the database. So a client server model, it works in the client server model. The client process which is running on a machine can communicate with the database server which is available on the same machine or on different location, which I just explained. Adaptive server is executed as an application, and the hardware that operating system run on is very transparent to the adaptive server, and adaptive server access the hardware resources through operating system, as is applicable for other RDBMSs also. What is visible to the adaptive server is only the user interfaces of the operating system in the interaction part. So this is what the basic architecture, this is how it works, the client server model works. Now adaptive server has two components mainly. One is the DBMS component and another is kernel component. The kernel component uses operating system services for process creation and manipulation, for device and file processing, and for inter-process communication, IPC. So these are kernel processes, and they uses operating system. That means kernel component of adaptive server interact with the operating system services for the purpose of process management and for the process of device and file processing, and for communication, inter-process communication. Adaptive server has a DBMS concept or component to process the SQL statements and access the data. So this is the architecture part, the DBMS component and the kernel component. There are some system databases. When you install, there are some system databases which are created. The first one is the master, which is mandatory, which keep tracks of everything, which has the schemas and definitions and everything, the master database. So without master you cannot even create a database. So master device is mandatory, master database is mandatory in order to work with Sybase. So master database, then we have model database. I'll explain each of these databases in the coming slides. Master database, model database, Sybase system procedures. So Sybase system procedures. So still the name is the same. So this is basically the database where stored procedures are kept. That is a kind of library, you can say, to keep the procedures. And Sybase system DB. Then we have a temp DB. Then we have DBCC DB. By default, DBCC DB is not created and installed. You have to install it. You have to populate it to use DBCC, that is database control commands. So you have to understand that, you have to install it and you have to populate it in order to work with the DBCC commands, which I will discuss in day 4 to understand the concept of DBCC, how to work with it, and we have a dedicated lab assignment for this. So we have lab assignments, separate lab assignment and separate session on DBCC also. So a model, master model, Sybase system procedures, Sybase system DB, temp DB, application databases, then sub security. Sybase security is also additional database which is required for security purpose. DBCCP, DB, Sybase syntax, pubs2 and the user databases, application databases are additional, which are created by the users. So we have some mandatory system databases. To start with, I would say master model, Sybase system procedures, and temp DB. These are mandatory 4 databases which are required in order to work with it. Okay, so these rest of the databases can be installed later on also, can be built later on also. Now let's understand these databases one by one. Master database is used to control the operations of adaptive server. It stores information about all user databases along with their database devices. So as I said, you cannot even create a database, you cannot even manage the databases unless you have the master database. So it is mandatory because it controls the it controls all the operations of adaptive server. Okay. Second, we have model database. This is basically, my friend, template. This is the database structure. The basic structure of any database require a template. Now this template of course can be changed, customized as per your need. Okay, so when we say model database, if you have specific requirement in your company in terms of the structure of the database, so you can do so, you can customize that and make changes in the model database, so that after that whenever you create any database, that will have the basic structure same. Now what are these basic structure? What might be included in this basic structure? Maybe the database parameters, configuration settings, security settings, users, so the rights, privileges of public group, which is a public group, which it is mandatory for every database, which is created immediately, but you should restrict that public group. So model database, it gives you a template for new user databases, and it has a required system tables, so that is catalog tables for each user database. Whenever you create, you can alter model database to customize structure of newly created databases. Once you customize it, once you make changes to the model database, then of course whenever you create a new database, that will have those structures and those customizations, custom parameters. Everything we do to model will also be reflected in each new database which is created after the customization of model. So this is what the model database is concerned. Then Sybase system procedures database. The system procedures are stored in database Sybase system procedures. When any user run a system stored procedure, adaptive server looks for that procedure in the user's current database. So by default, what happens is, it is the detailed information is checked into the current database of the user, that is user database. Okay, if it is not found in the user's database, then adaptive server will look for this procedure in Sybase system procedures. Okay, that means the first priority is the user's own database, current database. Second priority is the Sybase system procedures database, and even if it is not found there, third, it will look in the master database. So that means if I have a procedure with the name A in all the 3 databases, user database, Sybase system procedures, and the master, which one will be executed? Quite obviously the one which is stored in the user database. And if I have one stored procedure A in Sybase system procedures and master, then which one will be executed from Sybase system procedures? So that is the concept. That is how it is to be checked. So therefore, sometime what happens is you have created as a procedure, you are stored into the Sybase system procedures, and might be there some same user stored procedure is located in the user database, and you are expecting that it should behave is the way you have created it. You have stored it in Sybase system procedures, and probably it might not work the way you expected. Why? It's simple reason that there is the same stored procedure with the same name in the user database itself. So you have to be a little cautious which one is executed, where it is located. Then we have temp DB. It provides a storage area for temporary tables and other temporary working storage needs. The space in a temp DB is shared among all users of all databases on the server. So for joins and for other work tables and for that temporary needs of that, even for application requirement, we may have specific application required which requires some temporary data to be held for some time. Then we can create temporary tables. So temp DB, every RDBMS has this facility, and I'm sure you are aware of this, that yes, in every RDBMS we have a temporary database, and this also applicable for SAP ASE. Then we have a Sybase system DB. This Sybase system DB has information about the distributed transactions. As I said when I was explaining the mandatory databases, I did not include this into the requirement. Why? Because this is applicable for distributed transactions. You know what does it mean? And just for revise, when we have a databases located at different geographical locations, and we execute a query on the database, and this query is a part of a transaction. Now to complete that entire transaction in a distributed environment, we need additional information to check or to keep a track in the consistency of this particular transaction, which is distributed in nature. So that information is stored into Sybase system DB. Adaptive server has a transaction coordination services for transactions that get propagated to remote servers. To achieve this, a user remote procedure call, it uses RPC or Component Integrated System, CIS. Okay, information about the remote servers used in distributed transactions is recorded in this database Sybase system DB with a table name called Sybase coordinations. So this is the table where the details are recorded and stored. So this is the table in the database Sybase system DB. So this is applicable, this is required if we have a database which is basically working in a distributed environment where the database is spread across multiple locations, and we are executing the transactions on the distributed location, distributed database. Then we have optional databases, Sybase security for auditing purpose. Then sample databases, pubs2 and pubs3, which comes along with the installation. If you choose at the time of installation, you can use these two also. Then we have DBCC database, which is not installed default, which you have to create yourself. We have to populate it, but sample scripts are available, sample commands are available to create the DBCC database. Tables used for input and output of DBCC check storage commands, which is mandatory for you because we have a session on check storage part. Then job scheduler database is a system that is Sybase management DB. This is for job scheduling purpose. So therefore, optionally we can have DBCC database, we can have Sybase management DB, we can have Sybase security DB, and these are the additional databases which are required, and of course the sample databases pubs2 and pubs3 when you are working for the first time. So these are optional databases. So when you install Sybase, you got these databases. Communication. All communication with the server is via Sybase Open Client or Open Server TDS, which is the Tabular Data Stream Protocol on the top of a TCP/IP network. To read more on this tabular data stream, because this is not the scope of our training that we focus on TDS. If you really want to know about it, this is the link. Read more on this TDS at n.wikipedia.org/wiki/tabular_data_stream. So you can have a look to understand this tabular data stream format. Is a protocol which works on the application layer of TCP/IP network. All client connectivity uses TCP/IP protocol, TDS protocol. Mind it, this is not compatible with the ITDS of Microsoft. When you are working with Sybase, earlier they were same, but Microsoft has come out with ITDS and Sybase has TDS now. Client connectivity layers include open client, which is native client. We can also have JDBC, ODBC, OLEDB, ADO.NET, and Ruby and Perl. Even the Python is allowed. Okay. Interoperability with Microsoft TDS and JTDS is not certified or supported. Sorry, not ITDS, JTDS. Direct definition, interfaces, SQL.ini and directory services are supported. Now, what is this direct definition? What is this interface? What is this SQL.ini? I can talk about direct definition means directly connecting to that. Interface means maintaining all connection details in one file to provide the configuration settings for connectivity. That means if I have SSL configured, if I want to connect through TCP/IP on a given port on Ethernet, so I have to specify these details in a file called interfaces. We have a session on interfaces also. SQL.ini is a Windows version of interfaces, and we have a utility to edit this file SQL.ini called ds edit. So interfaces in Unix is basic text file which can be edited using any VI editor, any normal editor, and SQL.ini can be edited using a utility provided called ds edit. And the directory services, LDAP or Active Directory. So you can use even the Active Directory to authenticate users for Sybase, or you can use LDAP also to authenticate. However, we are not going to practice this LDAP and Active Directory, but concept building the file configuration files and what is stored and how they are managed will be discussed in the session, and we have a session for this LDAP also. IPv4 and IPv5 protocols are supported, so you can connect using IPv4 and IP version 5 and version 6 both are allowed. Connectivity tools, as I discussed, we have a standard supported ODBC, JDBC, CT library. Then earlier DB library was there, but now it is no more use. We have SOAP, and not really standard protocol, but then Ruby on Rails is also supported, Perl is supported, Python is supported, so you can connect through any of these languages and tools also. So this is connectivity part. Utilities. When we install Sybase, there are some utilities which are available to work with, to interact with the server. The most important, the easiest, and the very advanced utility is a GUI based utility, Sybase Control Center. I have a complete session on Sybase Control Center. I will brief you on this topic at the appropriate time, but very small, if you want a 2-minute understanding. Earlier it was a Sybase Central. Sybase Central was a GUI based utility used to manage one instance, one location. So because it was a GUI based application, standalone application running on your machine. So that means where the server is running, Sybase Central was running on the same machine. Version 5.5 we have Sybase Central, even 15.5 we have Sybase Central. But now in 16 we have a concept called Sybase Control Center. This is web based utility. It works on secure HTTP protocol, that is HTTPS, and with the host name and the given port number you can control all your servers and resources located at different places from one point, one location, wherever you are. That means you just open a browser, type the URL, connect to the proper port, and you can manage all your server from one location. So you don't have to be sitting on the server to manage that server. You can be anywhere. To understand the similarity, you can take it as a like enterprise manager of Oracle, which is web-based utility to manage Oracle server. So it is similar to enterprise manager, but then you will find it in interface is slightly different, but the concept remains same. So you can manage multiple servers, multiple resources and everything, even monitoring and security and configurations and everything, administration, everything can be done using Sybase Control Center. Okay, so we'll discuss that. DBISQL is a GUI based command line tool like your query analyzer in Microsoft, and we had some utility in Oracle also. So DBISQL is a GUI based command line tool, so you can use that. ISQL is a terminal type, that is a character based interaction, so command line. GUI is a GUI based command line. I mean GUI, when you open that DBISQL, it opens a window, and so therefore command utility to work with SQL, to work with the databases, you can use DBISQL. If you want to work in GUI, if you want to work in character user interface, you can use ISQL. So ISQL is basically terminal type command line tool. Then BCP, bulk copy program. So it moves data between database tables and flat files. So it is a very vast utility. In fact, I have a dedicated session for BCP, and number of options are, maybe hundreds of options are available. If I start explaining, we can spend entire day on understanding the BCP concept. Then we have Sybase migrate. It moves schema and data from one server to another. That is migrate utility. Then Sybase, the SQL debugger, it is utility to help debug stored procedures and triggers. These are utilities, and there are some more utilities like DS edit, as I was talking about win.ini, that connection details utility available in Microsoft for Microsoft Windows, that win.ini. You can edit that using DS edit utility. So this is a graphical editor for Windows servers, Windows based Sybase servers. OPT diag, this is optimizer statistics for database tables to display that. DDL generation, DDLGEN. This is, my friend, a very good tool if you want to generate the definition, that is create statement of a database or stored procedure or a table. That means if you want to understand how master database was created, how Sybase system procedure was created, if you really want to generate the complete DDL for that particular database, then you can use a DDLGEN. So DDL is a command line utility. You don't have to go anywhere. You have to go to the command prompt, dollar prompt or your C prompt, and then you have to use this DDLGEN with the configuration, the authentication parameters, user ID, password, and server name, and the object type, what type of object you are providing, that is the table or database or what, and then the name of the object. It will generate the DDL and it will give it to you. You can output the you can redirect the output so that you can understand that later on also, and you can check that. Then SRV build, it is an interactive utility to build a new server. Basically, when we build a server, we have some response file. We create all the answers. We store all the answers related to base configuration of a server, and these answers and parameters and the values are stored in a response file, and we can provide that response file to build the server. Now it is optional. If you want to provide the details one by one in an interactive manner, you can use SRV build. That is interactive utility for building new servers and supplemental servers. Same way, server build RES, as I said, response. So if you want to build server with RES utility, that is the response file, then non-interactive, that is a utility to build adaptive server enterprise and supplement servers from resource files, or RES, resource files or response file or whatever you call them. So in fact, Sybase provide you sample resource file to start with. If you have not done so, if you want to do like to understand the basic structure, then you can use that Sybase provided response file to build the server. Okay, what are your responsibilities as system administrator? Of course, it is your responsibility to install SAP ASE and backup server. It is your responsibility to create and manage SAP ASP user login accounts. Then granting roles and permission to ASE users. Managing and monitoring the use of disk space, memory and connections is your responsibility as a system administrator. backing up and restoring the databases as and when required, and in fact to plan a proper strategy to minimize the downtime and to reduce the mean time to recover, to increase that as to reduce that mean time to recover and to increase the mean time between failure is again your responsibility. That means you have to be vigilant enough to monitor the activities going on the server before they reach to the threshold, before reach to the downtime. You have to monitor this, so you have to set thresholds and you have to monitor the thresholds, and you have to take proactive action so that system doesn't go down. Configuring SAP ASE to achieve the best performance is your responsibility, of course. And lastly, you are also responsible for assisting people with certain database design tasks and overlap with the work of application designers, such as enforcing integrity standards. So you have to assist developers also, designers also, application designers also, because you are responsible for integrity. Basically you are discipline in charge. So if you have more strict discipline, more consistent your database will be. You will get best performance from your database, from your server. So you are to be vigilant, you are to be disciplined in charge in terms of your RDBMS and the database administrator. Although a system administrator generally concentrates on the tasks that are independent of the application running on SAP ASE, he or she is likely to have the best overview of all the applications to monitor, to understand the overall structure of the RDBMS or your SAP ASE. Thank you, my friends. That was all about this introduction.